The shout now. Well done, Bobby Charlton. Well done, Manchester United.
It's a Sheringham, and Solskjaer has done it! Bobby Sarr saved it! United again! Renee! A magnificent goal by Robin van Persie!
Welcome to United Hour, your official Red Cafe podcast for all things Manchester United. I'm your host, Nick.
Hi, I'm Mark.
And I'm Ashwin.
Yeah, we're back on Monday, July recording 1st, the day the lads are back in training. Thought it was as good a time as any to have a kind of refresh on where we're at, a couple of signings, a bit of transfer muppetry, and some mention as well, like there's a lot of talk at the moment as well, on Twitter at least, about the Glazers and the ownership situation, and then a few other things we can throw out there. The big things, I guess we should get straight into the transfer stuff, obviously. 2 signings in, Daniel James from Swansea and Aaron Wan-Bissaka. I think, Ashwin, you've been the most moany transfer muppet so far this season, judging this off-season by the WhatsApp group. So what, are you happy yet, at least that we've got a couple of players in, or foaming at the bit?
No, I think it's in my nature to bitch and moan, but I think if you just look around at, forget the rest of just England, but like Europe, a lot of the top clubs haven't, other than Madrid, I don't think a lot of the top clubs have done a lot of business. So I don't know what that says about the transfer market in general. It feels like the prices are so inflated that getting a lot of these transfers done is becoming extremely problematic. So I think to actually have gotten, and granted, people are saying it's just Daniel James and it's just Wan-Bissaka, but especially Wan-Bissaka, I don't think that was an easy transfer to get done. Not in terms of, they asked for 70 million initially, so to get it down to 50 and you get to keep the sell-on clause and Zaha's contract, I think that's pretty decent business. But obviously it's not enough. We need to get more done, but it seems that it's just a matter of time before Longstaff gets done, and Fernandez is an odd case, but there's a lot of links, so that's good. I think that if they got those 2 in, it's not going to turn us into title contenders, but I think that would definitely give us enough to finish top 4, given that Chelsea and Arsenal are way more fucked than we are.
Yeah, I think it's very early days yet, really, and people get too irate too quickly. The transfer window's not even been opened that long. Plus, there's been the under-21 championships, there's the South American championships, there's the African nations going on, and players tend not to have much to do with transfer dealings and all while this is going on. I'd said, while people going, why aren't we getting this Aaron Wan-Bissaka sorted out? I was like, look, he's playing in a tournament. I'm pretty sure as soon as that tournament finishes that this signing will get done. And I think it was literally the day or 2 after that England came home from actually a really crap performance at the under-21s. That deal was signed. I think he was like a fantasy football breakout legend last year. I had him for the whole season. Fantasy stats were great for a cheap defender, but I'm sure his price will go up now that he's a United player. I think, his defensive stats have been really impressive. I think I've seen a few things being thrown out there. I haven't actually got them in front of me. But also, attacking-wise, I certainly remember him getting a few assists and I think a couple of goals last season. So, I'm looking pretty forward to see him there. The only thing was that we already had kind of Dalot that we thought was going to be a good prospect for being right back. So where do you think that leaves Dalot now, Mark?
He can either respond and try and do better, or he can find a niche somewhere in the squad. There's always the option, and there's been the speculation that he might move up to play more of a right wing position.
And he did play an attacking couple of games, didn't he, last season?
and acquitted himself quite well as well, to be honest. So he's got that about him. He's got that in him to definitely do that. He's also a more than capable deputy at left back as well, and Luke Shaw hasn't had the greatest of history with regards to his injuries. He did a lot better with it last year and the season before that, but obviously it's still there that he might struggle with injuries and he might need to have a few games rest and someone's going to need to be ready and able to deputise for him. We had, like, in our peaks, we've had competition for places all over, and that's been sometimes with players who have been in and around the same age as well. So this is not a situation that we should be shying away from. This is exactly the kind of situation that we should want to find ourselves in. We've got young, hungry players who have shown that they've got ability, who are now going to have to compete against one another and now have to be on their game 100% of the time. It's a good situation to be in rather than a bad one.
Yeah, and I'm guessing we all know quite a lot about Aaron Wan-Bissaka, probably a bit less about Daniel James, seeing he's come from the Championship. I mean, I did watch a bit of a Wales game, I think, a couple of weeks ago where he was playing. I mean, it's kind of difficult to tell that much. I mean, Wales aren't that great at the moment themselves. But yeah, you're assuming there's been some insider information coming from Ryan Giggs about him and has been given his seal of approval. I mean, I think the one thing that a lot is being written about is that he's incredibly fast. And yeah, hopefully for that kind of game on the counter, and that is something that can add in there. I'm not expecting huge things from him immediately, and maybe he's the kind of player who maybe the season after we might really see the best of. But yeah, he's relatively quick, cheap signing, add to the squad, see what he can do there. I mean, we did have a load of questions on Red Cafe this time, which is good to see. Maybe if we go straight into a couple of those.
We did beg for them.
Yeah, we did, Ben, yeah.
I just wanted to go back to the Wan-Bissaka thing for a second, because Mark talked about, and you mentioned it, there's kind of like, oh, he signed Dalot, and so now, like, what are we doing with him, and are we already giving up on him, and what does this say about our transfer strategy? And it's like, honestly, I don't know how you could have watched United for the last, 5-6 years. Like, you need to have competition at these positions. Yeah, Dalot, he was a good prospect. I actually think that there were signs last year, even though it wasn't obviously the greatest year he had, or possible, but, there were definitely some positive signs, particularly like his attacking play, I think, was really positive. But I think when a prospect like Wan-Bissaka comes along, who is, for me, I think he was the best defensive fullback in the league. And he has potential going forward. He was a converted winger. He played a little bit more restricted of a role in Palace, obviously, given how they play and their tactical approach. But, I think he led the league in dribbles by a fullback, so he can obviously carry the ball forward. It's about linking up and crossing and that stuff. Like, can he improve? Does he have the scope to improve? I would like to think so at that age. I would like to think that, given his athleticism and that fact that he was a winger at a younger age, that is a positive and can be improved in a better side.
Yeah, definitely. Look, he's going to have plenty of time to improve. And in fact, the only question mark is that we have paid quite a lot for a player who's only had one season in the Premier League.
That's not even true. He's been good for 1 3/4 seasons now. Like Timmy Fosu-Mensah played about 7 or 8 games for Palace and did really well, and then unfortunately got injured. And then Wan-Bissaka took his place from there. So Wan-Bissaka, I think we had a podcast and around about I can't remember whenabouts it was, but I remember very, very early on in sort of Wan-Bissaka playing for Palace, had made mention of him being the best right back outside of the top 6, and that was very, very early on. I didn't even know it was his first season, so good he was playing. I assumed that he'd been around for a lot longer, maybe I just assumed because of the name that he'd been brought in from elsewhere as well, and he was a seasoned pro. Like, he looked fantastic. So it's not been just for last season that he's been at this level. He's been at this level for a good 1 3/4 seasons now. It's not that much of a difference in the grand scheme of things, but he is only young as well. It's 50 million well spent.
Yeah, I just think it's a caliber of prospect. Like, if you're Manchester United and you're trying to get back to your roots and all of this, like, if you have a free run at an established, young Premier League, like, who excelled at the Premier League level at a position of need, like, you go get him. You go get him, and, like, you don't worry about, if Dalot's going to get in his feelings about it and feel hurt, like, that's his problem. Like, this is, you can't, like, this is what being ruthless is, right? We've spent so much time talking about how Ole has to be ruthless and we need competition at positions, and then I see, like, half the calf when once we signed Wan-Bissaka, it's like, oh, well, what are we doing with Dalot now? And what about Ethan Laird? And it's like, look, man, if these guys are good enough, like, that's a good problem to have, and we'll have to figure that out later. But last year we had one actual fullback who was functional, in Luke Shaw on the left, and then we had paraplegic Young and Dalot, who was like a very raw prospect, which we knew coming into the season, and even started the season injured, which we knew was going to be a thing. So, like, to go from that to having Shaw on the left, Wan-Bissaka on the right, and Dalot who can back up both of those positions or slot forward on the right wing potentially, like, that's a good problem to have. That's a much improved position for United moving forward over the next 3, 4 to 5 years. And that's a good thing. That's progression in the squad, and that's what you want to see. Not, we don't sign Wan-Bissaka because we hope Dalot will be good and maybe Ethan Laird is going to come up from the academy and kill it. Like, these are not bets we can make. You have to hedge your bets.
Yeah, look, that's all pretty obvious. Anyone who's moaning about that doesn't need to be listened to, basically. And that's the problem nowadays, that everybody moans about everything. And it's full of, like, Twitter of people just moaning about anything that happens, basically. But yeah, look, I mean, the question does come straight in. Like, we had Witch Trials on Red Cafe who said, quick question on regard to our general approach to recruitment, which is very relevant to the players we're talking about. What do you think about a reported transfer strategy of targeting young players and trying to develop them rather than bringing in established players in their prime? And what about the alleged buy British component of the strategy? And I think Ole himself has mentioned this, and it's kind of supposed to be going back to Fergie's transfer strategy. And yeah, for me, I'm all for it, for, both of those things. Yeah, we've had a kind of semi kind of go at the Galactico thing. I mean, not exactly in the Real Madrid kind of way, but there's definitely been players, I think, bought in more for their kind of name rather than what they're going to offer us. I mean, I'm talking about the likes of Falcao's and Di Maria's, maybe even like Schweinsteiger, and it was quite a failed period of players who were in and out of the club pretty quickly. And even, more recently, Sanchez, although, at that time, I think most people were pretty excited about the signing. And, we'll definitely talk about him more. But, with these kind of players have been more on what you'd call that Galactico side. And it looks like we're moving away from that. Like I say, I personally am all for that. It doesn't mean every player we're going to buy has to be young and British. I mean, I've seen some other people saying, how can, where are we going to find leaders from or that if we do that? But I'm sure if other opportunities come up, they'll still look at it. But in general, I think they're looking to add these kind of more players in there. I mean, are either of you two think that's an issue or a problem? Because, as I say, I'm all for it.
It's not really that big of an issue when Real Madrid are pretty much doing the exact same thing, just not localizing it to Spain. They've pretty much gone out and identified, right, okay, these are a bunch of young players who we need to go out and get. And these are going to be the next job lot coming through. If we invest heavily in these guys and they develop in the way that we expect them to, then that leaves them in a great position, and they don't need to rebuild then in another 4 to 5 years. Which
they have still bought, like Eden Hazard, though. So they're not.
They have bought Hazard, and that's as a compliment to the rest of these young players like Jovic and the guy from Lyon whose name escapes me.
Mendy.
Yeah. So they're looking to do much the same thing. Obviously, they would like to make a splash on someone like Pogba, but they're now tempering that whole Galactico approach slightly to say, right, okay, we need the majority of our players to be those who we identify that have high potential that we bring in and we develop them then moving forward. In terms of how it relates to us, I don't think it's more a buy British strategy, because obviously if the papers are to be believed, obviously we're close to Fernandes and we've agreed Ben Yedder. That would make 4 signings, only 2 of which are British. I think it's more to do with...
I mean, that's all rumour at the moment.
Yes, it is conjecture, and I'll quite happily concede that in this instance.
So the only 2 who've come in are young, are British.
Yeah, but Wan-Bissaka was a given. That's a position of need. And to be honest, over Europe right now, I think if you're looking at young right-backs who are defensively stable, Wan-Bissaka comes out at the top of the list anyway. So regardless of country being bought from, he should be the number 1 target anyway. Daniel James is a punt, who our scouts have identified as someone who's got maybe quite a bit of potential and certainly an asset to his game that can threaten straight away with his pace. Longstaff and the rest of it, again, with it all being rumoured, it's difficult to know. But I think this is more of a character. I think they're sort of more looking at trying to bring in players who know and understand what it means to play for Manchester United and who understand the levity and the expectations of what's going to be placed upon them. That's what it seems like to me, at least. I'm not saying that Johnny Foreigner doesn't get it. But
yeah, I think it seems about right.
There's a couple of things I've noticed with all the transfers. So it seems like, with Fernandez, we're seeing this a lot, but they've identified players who I think that they feel more or less they have a free run at. That there's not going to be significant competition for their signature, and like with Fernandez, at first they tried linking him with City. City came out and said we're not interested in him. The club itself actually came out and said that. They tried to link him with Liverpool, and Liverpool has basically had to come out and say that those reports are nonsense.
Well, listen, right, while we're talking about Fernandez, then there was a question from I Am Memphis, I know, who's listened to the podcast for a long time. So he says, see a lot of talk about us being after Bruno Fernandes, but due to being unimpressed with him on FIFA, can't get excited about his signing. So yeah, can you tell me what kind of player he is and how he's going to fit in and whose place should he take in the starting 11? So yeah, give us a bit about his stats and what kind of player are we looking at here?
So combined 50 goals and assists for Sporting this year, I think it was. Plays as an attacking midfielder, ostensibly. I think how he would fit in with us is that he would probably play the right-hand side of a midfield three. He could possibly play sort of the tip of a diamond as well, maybe, with sort of like Martial and Rashford ahead of him or something like that. He's good for, I think it was around about 3.1 key passes, 3.5 shots a game. So he's creative, likes to stick the ball on goal as well. Bit of a set piece demon, and is actually the captain already in the Sporting side. So there's that element of leadership that he brings.
I didn't know that actually, that he's captain, because as I say, yeah, there was a question as well that was about where we're going to get a new captain from. So yeah, that is interesting.
And he stayed at the club after that whole thing last year when like they had the ultras come into the locker room and beat up the players. Yeah. I don't know, the whole thing is weird, but he stayed. A lot of the guys left, but he stayed, and I think they actually won the whatever their FA Cup is there. I forgot what it's called, but and that was like
the Portuguese Cup.
Yeah, that was their first major trophy, and I think quite a while. So. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely speaks to leadership in some capacity.
It speaks to his character, absolutely, because there were a few Sporting players who used that as an opportunity to kind of get out their contracts and leave Sporting in a bit of a hole. Obviously, he was someone who had impressed in that season as well prior to that, so he could have left and he could have got himself a decent contract elsewhere, but he chose to stay. He gets between the lines. He's a creative passer. He's an underrated defender as well. He's got an engine. He gets about people. So, yeah, he would be the Herrera replacement. So I think you'd be a fan there, Nick.
But probably more creative than Herrera, though, right?
I think he's like, we keep hoping Lingard could be, but doesn't quite turn into for club. Like I
would go with that.
I just think he can play in a variety of roles. Like he can play as a 10. He can play as an 8. He gives you versatility, and he gives you another creative force, which I think is like, that's absolutely necessary for us. Even if Pogba stays, it's just something like we cannot have only one midfielder that we can kind of funnel our attacks through.
I think, yeah, creativity is something that I think we all know is something that we've definitely lacked and been way too reliant on Pogba and has to be added to like this summer. I mean, since we've mentioned Pogba, again, leads on to perfectly to some of the other questions. So yeah, Butty19 said, if a player doesn't want to play for the club, should they be sold? Will a player who doesn't want to play for us ever truly give 100%? So, I mean, obviously at the moment we're talking about Lukaku and Pogba. There was another question as well about what kind of reception do you think they would get if they stayed? I mean, we have had this situation before. I mean, Rooney's the obvious one who like publicly came out saying he wanted to leave the club, ended up staying. There's been a few others I remember in the past, like maybe Rio Ferdinand, even Ryan Giggs, who at some points had kind of quite not public, but it was kind of well known that they were maybe looking at other options, but did end up staying at the club. And they had a few maybe little boos here and there, but nothing major. I'm pretty disappointed in Pogba for sure to come out publicly and talk about maybe it's time for a new challenge. I'm less annoyed with Lukaku, but still not great to see, just because he did lose his place, was spending most of the season on the bench.
Oh, mate.
So I'm not that surprised that he might look to go elsewhere. But as I said, I personally am pretty annoyed that Pogba would make that kind of comment. But, do you think these players will stay? Should we be going out of our way to keep them? I think on our finals podcast last season, I think I had said that I would like Pogba to stay and for us to try and build the whole team around him because I think he can be that good. Whereas I know some others are now pretty done with him. Where are you two at on Pogba now?
So I'm the complete opposite to you. I'm more shocked and appalled at Lukaku's comments than I am Pogba's comments. Like,
Right.
Pogba's comments for what they are, they're obviously disappointing to hear, but he's not coming out and saying, "Oh yeah, come and get me, Madrid," and all of this. Like he said, maybe it's time for a new challenge. Like it's not great, but it's up there with, in terms of ambiguity, it's up there with only God knows and Ronaldo. Do you know what I mean? So like, I'm not that he is a complete modern footballer in the sense that when it comes to transfers and club loyalty and things like that, he is completely amoral. He's just that. I'm not shutting the door, but I'm not closing it either. Like as fans, we want to see him shut the door on a transfer linked to Real Madrid, absolutely. But he's a professional footballer who's got to look out for his individual interest as well. So objectively, I'm not as appalled with what Pogba said. Lukaku's come out and basically just rolled over and had Inter Milan tickle his tummy for him, and he's like, "Oh, come and get me, Conte." Like that one was the more aberrant one to me. That's like, I'm trying to force this move through, and like I don't think that move is going to happen for him. I don't think Inter can find the cash for it, and I think Lukaku probably knows that, and that's why he's turned up to training 3 days early, looking rather sheepish in his car today, because I think he knows that he's probably said far too much and has a lot of making up to do. I think if Solskjaer could, I think he'd get rid of him, like for nothing tomorrow. That'd be my opinion, but
I think we should get rid of him. I think his comments are ridiculous. I honestly would not even. I would hope that Solskjaer pushes him out. I don't care about. I'm sure that someone will show me how good his XG is if we create chances and all that kind of shit. But like, I really don't care. I think Pogba's comments were not great, but they were more coy, I guess is a better way to say it.
But the question anyway is, do you think that we should be going like out of our way to try and convince somebody like Pogba to stay?
Pogba, yes. Lukaku, but it's like there's kind of a level to it, right? Where I think with Pogba, you can be like, look, I understand the move hasn't been what you expected. Give me a year. Give me what, because I don't think we can afford to sell him right now. I think you need to go to him and tell him, like, if you put in the effort this year, if you consistently show up and are not a disruptive force and help us get top four, we will work with you and with Madrid to get you your dream move next summer, right? You basically do what Ferguson did with Ronaldo, right? That's basically like what you have to do, I think, with him. Whereas with Lukaku, I don't really think we need to hold on to him. If the point is that we want to extract a certain price and we're not going to budge from that, okay, fine, fair enough. I can understand that because we've done a poor job of selling players before in the past and taking losses. So I think, if you want to draw a line there, fine, that's acceptable. And I do think if Lukaku stays, he's not one that's going to like kick up a fuss or anything like that. So I'm not too worried about that. But I would be very comfortable selling him and just bringing in like Ben Yedder or whoever. Yeah. All the reports on him I've read seem like he would be a fine addition to the strike force. But I don't know. I'm just very over Lukaku at this point.
And then, so the other one we've not mentioned is David De Gea, who's obviously still got a question mark over. Thankfully, keeps quiet, doesn't come out with anything, and but we know that his contract is kind of being discussed. because he doesn't have much long left on it now. I mean, Damien did ask basically straight out, do you think he will be at the club a year from now? I think that he will stay. I wouldn't even begrudge him leaving at this point, just because there's been that many times he's been our best player and not been helped out by the rest of the team, and has stayed for quite a while. But I don't actually see necessarily where he'd go. I mean, I know people say he wants to go back to Madrid, maybe Paris Saint-Germain. I don't know if he'd be that excited to be going to Paris. Yeah, maybe he misses Spain. I don't know. Of course, I think it was mentioned again by Bastian on the thread. He said he was suggesting maybe De Gea wants to go to Real. Real don't want Courtois, but he does want to stay in Madrid, so he can go to Atletico, and then we'll take Oblak in a goalkeeper merry-go-round that keeps all parties happy. Sounds great in theory, but I doubt anything like that is going to happen.
It'd be the first FIFA freeway team trade or something like that. We're bringing the NBA straight into football if we try to pull something like that. But I'm kind of with you on this. I wouldn't begrudge him a move at this point. I feel a lot less objectionable towards him if he were to leave now than if he were to leave, say, when Van Gaal was the manager in that summer where the old where Ed finagled the fax machine to I don't know why we hate Ed Woodward so much. He's given us so much gold.
Yeah, that was a high point for him. The fax machine,
elite Woodwarding, right there, as I like to say. But no, I'm only happy. I'm not happy to see him go, but I wouldn't be disappointed to see him leave. As I say, he's given us a lot of good years. He should have won more relative to his performances and what he has won with us. Knowing the kid behind him, Dean Henderson, I'm not opposed to losing De Gea on a free. To be honest, we paid 18 million quid for him. We've got more than 18 million quid's worth of performances out of him. Would it be disappointing to lose out on, say, 50, 60 million euros? Yeah, but again, not my money, and I don't care. And his replacement will be ready-made next year anyway, and he wouldn't have cost a penny either. So I don't think you lose or gain anything by not signing him to a deal. I think maybe just the mutual parting of ways at the end of the season is probably what's best for him and what's probably going to be best for us in the long term as well.
Those kind of ones, though, actually, when we talk about kind of player who wants to leave, give you 100%, I'd actually be more worried about those players who are coming to end of a contract and already thinking about where they're playing next, rather than the likes of Pogba that maybe talk about a new challenge, but then might stay. Those I find a bit strange sometimes. Although, maybe I'm just saying it because I saw even what Ramsey was still putting in some pretty good performances for Arsenal. We had Herrera, all right, maybe he wasn't great, but I wouldn't say there was some massive drop off in his performance or anything. So maybe it's just something to think about there. Moving on, the kind of two players who've re-signed contracts. Just today it was that Rashford was announced, which is good to hear. I never really had any doubt.
£8 million a week.
Whatever it is, I don't really care. Don't think too much is made of all this stuff. Is he worth it? Blah, blah, blah. He's not done that great. But for me, Rashford had to stay, whatever he was asking for. I'm sure it wasn't too mental. The other one that caused a bit more controversy was Mata. And I put a post out on Red Cafe saying I was happy to hear that Juan Mata had signed. I mean, I don't expect him to be an integral player next year, but just for that kind of, I'm pretty sure, Mark, on the last podcast, you were saying he needed to be out the door. And there's been tons of people, again, moaning on Twitter and whatever, the forum about re-signing Mata as if it's like the end of the world, and it shows that we're not going anywhere. I mean, people don't understand that you need to have experienced players in the dressing room. It's not just about what they're going to offer on the pitch. And even if it's Ashley Young, even if it's Juan Mata, these are players who've been around. They have won things. They're still the right kind of characters that I think that we should have at the club, just to be guide kind of youngsters in the dressing room. And I think it's worth keeping a few of these kind of players around, even if they're not turning it on every week. They can still play now and again. I don't really see why people start losing their shit when these guys re-sign again.
After reading your post on that, actually, I changed my tune with regards to the matter. I'm actually hearing your rationale behind it. I kind of had it in the back of my head anyway, but having you put it into words, I was like, you know what, that's in terms of moves that we could possibly do this summer, that's probably the least offensive of the things that we could probably do this summer. I'm quite happy to have Mata around. Like, he's players like Gomez, Chong, Greenwood, they could all learn a lot of really good habits from Juan Mata, I think. He comes across as a fantastic pro and a really good character. And that's, like, I know good character, Brendan Rodgers, man, it's a bit of a meme or what have you, but there is something to be said for just having good human beings in and around your football team.
Definitely,
and Mata is definitely one of those.
All right, good to hear. I've changed your opinion there. And we did have a question actually from Holocene about the young players, which I know is your specialist subject. We're saying how much game time will be given to the young players next season. I mean, I think at the end of last year, we all saw Greenwood, Garner, Chong, Gomez, and I'm pretty sure Tuanzebe should be coming back in from Aston Villa. Did see two young guys who were in training today who I don't know that much about, and maybe you can fill us in on what positions they are. Was it Dylan?
Yeah, the first one, Dylan Leavitt, central midfielder, can kind of play as like an 8. He's good defensively, gets his foot in, gets about the pitch. I think some people are kind of losing their shit over John McGinn at the moment, and I don't think they're stylistically overtly similar, but I think they're kind of similar in stature and the way that they go about their business. Like, Dylan Levitt's very, very tidy on the ball. Hasn't, to my knowledge, unless he's had like a loan somewhere that I've completely missed, but to my knowledge, he's not played a professional game yet. And he was with the Wales squad, the full Wales squad, mind you. I don't think he got on the pitch, but Giggs has obviously seen something in him to the point whereby he's quite happy to integrate him into the Wales squad, whether it's just for experience, like Terry Venables used to do with players like Rio Ferdinand and Frank Lampard or what have you. I don't know, but Giggs obviously sees something in him, and I think there's a few at the club and a few in the youth forums as well who think extremely highly of him. The other one's a bit weirder. Ethan Hamilton, again, he's another central midfielder, another kind of box-to-box kind of player who can do all the dirty work in there. He came in quite highly touted, from what I remember, and kind of went about his business quite quietly. Still did pretty well in the youth teams, and then went on what seemed to be just one of those nothing type of loans before we shuffle someone out the door. Went to Rochdale for the second half of last season. I think he was in League One, I think, and acquitted himself fantastically well. Like, all the reviews that came back were extremely positive from him. So whether or not he's just been one of those ones who's taken that loan move and done his absolute best with it will remain to be seen. But I imagine that he will probably see some time on tour, just owing to the fact that he probably earned himself some whilst playing at Rochdale. But whether either of them make it here, I don't think any of them are more highly thought of than, say, a Gomez or a Greenwood or something like that. But as long as they put the work in, then, you know, there's guys like McTominay that just show, you know, you put the work in and you apply yourself with the right attitude, then anything can happen.
Yeah, and I mean, I personally am expecting to see quite a bit more of these young players next season than maybe we did under Mourinho, especially since, you know, Ole's constantly talking about going back to the kind of Fergie model of how he does things. I mean, one thing Fergie always used to do was in kind of cup games, he used to always give younger players a chance in both, like the FA Cup and the League Cup, and sometimes early European rounds. Whereas Mourinho tended to play very strong teams in all cup games and was really trying to win those trophies. And did, you know, end up winning a couple of them. So fair play. And we'd lost that final, FA Cup final as well. I expect Ole to go back to that Fergie model, and that we'll see a lot more of these youngsters in those cup matches. And I look forward to kind of seeing them basically. I would be surprised. I mean, maybe some of them will go on loan. I know, Mark, you've been very strong saying that you don't want these players to be going on loan, like your Chongs and Greenwoods and Gomez, and you think they were much better off staying at the club and developing here, right?
My position has kind of softened on that. I'm still diametrically opposed to the loan system, but I think from a pragmatic standpoint for the club, like, I think that they need to. If you're not going to play Chong, then it's pointless playing him in the reserves at this point. But it's not. It's about finding the right loan moves for these players. That I think what I'm more concerned about, or what I'm more opposed to, is how we've been treating our players in terms of where they go online, because it just seems to be a scattergun approach. Oh, you want this player on loan? Yeah, fine, take him, without any consideration about how that team plays, what level they're playing at. or anything like that. It's just this player needs some games, and go and have them. Like, it doesn't seem to be any sort of coherent plan behind any of it. But I think, in terms of the young players, I think you'll probably get a lot of players in the League Cup, a lot of those types of players in the League Cup. You'll obviously get them in the EFL trophy, which we're entered into this year. Our under 21s or under 23s are eligible to play in that game, in those games. So they'll get some good games, at least 2 or 3 run outs against professional opposition. So that'll be good experience for them.
Yeah, so that's the first time we're entering that, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's a good development.
What is it, under 23?
I think it's under 23s. I might have seen that it's actually under 21s though. So, but either way, we've still got a lot of promising players in both of those groups who could do with the game time. So either way is good for me. In the League Cup, again, you'll probably see a lot of those players that are playing in the EFL trophy also make appearances in the League Cup. Probably then in the Europa League, and then probably less as you get towards the FA Cup and league matches as well. I think that's how it'll be tiered. It'll be EFL Cup, you'll see loads. League Cup, you'll again see loads. Europa League, slightly less. FA Cup, less than that. And then in the league, only if players are standing out in those last 2 competitions, I think, will you see them get games in the league, just while we're restructuring the squad and still sort of filtering out all the dross.
Yeah, definitely. And then the only other player I wanted to just mention is Alexis Sanchez, who we'd kind of written off in our end of season podcast, and we're just saying, we hope somebody will take him. But he's all of a sudden had a bit of resurgence at the South American Copa. Do you think there's still hope for Sanchez, Ashwin?
No, I think he's done. He needs the ball so much to be effective, and he's never going to get the ball like that at United, and he's not going to ever justify. You just can't give him enough possession because he's not productive enough anymore. And that's,
he's doing it. He's doing it at the Copa right now.
I don't give a shit what he's doing right now. He's done. He's done. It sucks because I actually think all the flops he genuinely when he actually wants to be good, I don't really question his effort when I watch him play. He's just the application is there, the talent, the physical ability it's just kind of gone for him at that level. So whatever. I think he's going to hang around and be a squad player for the year. I just can't see anybody coming in and making a competitive offer to get him off our wage book, but it is what it is. It's a sunk cost, so I don't really worry about it.
Yeah, the only thing is, on the wages he's on, I'm not sure anybody will take him. So I think we may be stuck with him. So yeah, we just hope he can have some kind of resurgence and play on this good form in the summer and come back and offer something next season, because I'm not sure where else we go with him otherwise, really. And I remember, Mark, you had a list of about 8 players you wanted out of the club when we last recorded. I don't think any of them have left yet.
2.
And in fact, I've seen lists online where people have about 15 players that they want to leave, which is obviously just totally ridiculous. But I think the 2 that are top of my list, and I'm sure there's nobody out there who would disagree, is Rojo and Darmian. I mean, if they're still knocking around by the end of the transfer window, I'm going to be a little bit disappointed, but I'm not expecting the mass clear out that some people online think is going to happen. But surely we need to be making space for a few of these young players to have a few more minutes. I think, the one other question around kind of transfers and everything that I like to think, again, it was Damien actually who said, which one signing that any other club has already made so far this window would you have loved to seen at United, and why? I mean, I think we did say there hasn't been that many transfers. I guess, for me, the very easy answer to that is Eden Hazard, who's really been the one big transfer off the window so far. And for me, is the kind of standout player that, would have been great to come. Not somebody I ever thought we should go for, or I doubt he would have ever come to us after Chelsea and he's gone for that foreign challenge. But was there anyone else you guys picked out from the few transfers that have gone on that you thought we should have been looking at?
The standout for me was Frankie De Young. I think he would have sorted our central defensive midfield position for years, and that would have been 10, 11, 12 years of just one guy, one role, just knows how to play it. I think he's just got absolutely everything that you need to play that kind of role. And yeah, extremely jealous that Barcelona have managed to pick him up, and they'll obviously make use of him. But that's the standout for me, is Frankie De Young, absolutely.
I don't know. There hasn't really been much business in the window, but maybe I guess De Young would be good. But I don't know. Is Rodri done? The City one, or that's unofficial, is it?
It's not been announced yet, I don't think.
Like I say, the only other big transfer was Hernandez. Bayern Munich paid a lot for him at centre back, and yeah, we are looking for a centre back. But yeah, I didn't hear us linked with him at all.
No, his name never came up once, so I just assumed that it was just that. I assumed that that's probably been done for a while, because I didn't even see a lot of speculation leading up to it. So I assumed that was just Bayern doing what Bayern do, just doing their business quietly, like they always seem to.
So then, yeah, the only one other question that I did want to answer that I quite liked from Elvis on Red Cafe. Yeah, his name actually is Elvis, yeah. ESM, UFC, whatever year it was. It used to change year by year, I remember way back when, but I think he's stuck on wherever he started.
He's on 07.
But yeah, he said, who's been the worst number 7 we've had since Ronaldo? I think there was this stat went out that since Ronaldo, we've had 5 different players wear the number 7 shirt, and then they've scored a total 10 goals in however many seasons it's been now, which is, yeah, really quite embarrassing. But yeah, it's been a kind of cursed shirt really since then, after being that historic shirt with, like, you know, you're associated to Robson, Cantona, Best, Beckham. You know, there's been so many great players wearing it, and then obviously Ronaldo more recently.
Steve Coppell.
Yeah, even, yeah, look, yeah, he was a damn good player for us as well. But yeah, I think we did put this out on our WhatsApp, and I think Ed was constantly championing Michael Owen, who he really hates. But yeah, for me, Owen is nowhere near the top of bottom of the list, I guess, because yeah, I still remember that epic City winner, and I think anyone who was at Old Trafford that day could not ever put down Owen as being one of our biggest flops. He did also do a few other things for us. I think he scored the winner in the League Cup final, had a hat-trick in some Champions League game somewhere.
Yeah,
there you go.
Wolfsburg away. Obertan looked like a world beater in that game as well, just FYI.
Well, still, like I say, so for me, he's not top. For me, the worst one currently is Sanchez, just because of the amount of expectation, how much we're paying for him, and just how much of a disappointment he's been so far. For me, he's the one that I've really been most disappointed with. But yeah, who did you two pick out of a big list of 5 failures?
I had Di Maria. Yeah, I can't stand that guy.
I love how much you hate him.
He's the worst. He's just scum. Beating PSG was awesome, and 90% of it was just everything about that guy. He came to United. He literally just used United to get to PSG, and he's just so pathetic. Like, his entire mentality and how easily he quit. Say what he will about Sanchez, but he hasn't quit. He just isn't what he was, and we stupidly bought him in his decline phase when some of the statistics already bore that out. That's just stupid on our part. But Di Maria, we bought him. He had just come off his probably his best year in his prime. He allegedly asked Ronaldo about the move, and Ronaldo convinced him and got him excited about it. And then he came and got mad because Van Gaal didn't play him in his preferred position a couple of times, and then basically just gave up halfway through the year. So yeah, fuck him. I don't give a shit about that guy, and I'm very happy he ended up at PSG and hasn't won anything other than the league there, which is fine by me.
And Mark, who's your worst number 7 since Ronaldo?
Valencia. And not bashing Valencia because I'm actually a huge Tony fan in the grand scheme of things, but just for that one season that he had whilst he was wearing the 7 shirt. He
actually gave it back, didn't he? He said, "Listen, I don't want this shirt.
Listen, I cannot handle this." At least he had the good sense to do that. I guess at least he had a modicum of self-awareness. But honestly, from the moment he put it on, he just forgot how to be a footballer, and that speaks volumes for me. It's like when you put on a shirt and you forget how to play football, that automatically makes you the absolute worst footballer to wear the 7 shirt, just on the basis of the fact that he forgot how to do it. And the thing is that he changed back the following season and was magic again. So
yeah.
it's the
So yeah, really,
weirdest
that
thing.
shirt really is cursed, isn't
It
it?
is like no one should wear it now. Like you had the greatest run of players, greatest run of free players to ever wear a shirt. You got Cantona. Oh no, you got Robson. It was his squad number. Then you got Cantona. Then you've got Beckham, and then Ronaldo. It's probably the greatest run of 4 players to ever wear a single number at a club ever. And now there will not be a 5th one in that chain. It's just impossible. Just retire the number. No one wears the number 7 anymore. You just have done with it.
Yeah, I mean, the one other we didn't mention who wore it was Memphis Depay. Again, somebody who I think when we bought him in, there was quite a lot of excitement about. Never quite happened. He's doing all right nowadays, isn't he? Is he still in Lyon?
Yeah, he had a really good season last season, and he's not exactly pulled up trees this season. But I think he's been talking more about a move than anyone's actually interested in taking him on. I think he just needs to concentrate on his football again, because he's got a book out because. The burning issues of the day are obviously going to be sorted out by a fucking Memphis Depay book. People are clamoring to read that. He's a clown, essentially, who just needs to concentrate on his football.
So yeah, I think that wraps up most of the kind of stuff we had relating to transfers. And like I said, I've tried to stay away from a lot of the rumour because we just get linked with so many people and so many of it is just absolute rubbish.
I think it's over 70.
It's crazy. Me, I don't read any of this rumour. For me, until it's actually an official story on BBC, then it's meaningless. And really, until the club actually announce anything official nowadays, I take absolutely no notice. But yeah, I do know we're quite strongly linked with the likes of Longstaff and Fernandez and Ben Yedder. So yeah, probably there is something in there somewhere. But we'll wait and see what happens for the rest of the transfer window. I mean, the next kind of big topic that we're going to have a bit of discussion about because it's trending all over Twitter and plenty of posts on Red Cafe at the moment. And we did get the question as well on Twitter from at Sit Down Dino, who says, Glazer out movement, discussing ideas on how we could all help to put pressure on them to sell. I mean, don't get time to post that much on Red Cafe nowadays, but it was one of my old favourite subjects, was talking about ownership and the Glazers and everything. But I'm talking about 10 years ago when I used to spend far too much time debating and arguing about these kind of things. So it was kind of funny for me to see this become a big talking point again this summer. I mean, it kind of came out of nowhere a bit, but all of a sudden it was all over Twitter, and I think it was actually like the number one kind of subject being mentioned on there, which in itself is quite kind of powerful and interesting. But I think people got a little bit ahead of themselves personally. I mean, my personal opinion is that, look, I'm no great fan of the Glazers. But the big question to me is, who do you get to replace them? And it's, for me, it's nowhere near as bad to the position where you just say, look, it has to be anybody. And, there's some like the Saudi royal family, there's big kind of moral question marks about. I think some other guy that I've never previously heard of, his name has been thrown out this week. So Jim Radcliffe, who apparently is like worth something like 20 billion, and even though he lives out in Monaco and is apparently a Chelsea season ticket holder, now the newspapers are saying that he's a childhood United fan. He was actually born around Manchester, so it's definitely possible. And there's been like a vague kind of link to him. I don't know if there's anything in that. I mean, if you actually look at it financially, the worth of the club nowadays is something around like 4 billion, which is a crazy amount of money. And who could actually come in to buy us and who we'd actually want, for me, is where really people need to think about what is the alternative to what we have. Because it's all fine and good to talk about Glazers out and whatever, but you have to talk about what the alternative option is really. And as terms of what can fans do to push them out, really, I think the realistic answer is nothing. I mean, the Glazers have shown for years now. There was big protests back when they first came in 2005. There was another big protests around the kind of green and gold movement, which was like 2009. And in the end, fans do show their dissatisfaction, and I think that is important. I'd never tell people not to do that. And there is a lot to be unhappy about at the moment as well. So fair enough that they get the message across that, look, we're not happy and things need to change. But in terms of this kind of fan movement actually causing the onus to change. I can't really see it happening myself. I mean, yeah, do you guys have any different opinion, or where are you at on these things?
We can't ever be in a position whereby we're owned by the Saudi royal family. Ever. Like, if that happens, then I'm done. Like, I won't watch a game, I won't go to a game. I'm like, that to me is the moral tipping point for me. Because I wouldn't be able to separate like how opposed I would be to that from a moral standpoint, to then trying to levy my enjoyment into Manchester United. I think it would be mean the complete abandonment of our principles in terms of our youth team as well, because they're not going to stand for blood and young players and things like that. That's going to be more headline signings, more Galacticos, more of the same bullshit that we're going through that hasn't worked for so long now, and it just all perpetuates the bubble that will eventually burst. And that's before my moral objections towards them owning the club. I was saying to you before we started, Nick, that the Glazers are possibly the second worst group of people that could possibly own us, and the Saudis are the only people that beat them in that auspicious league table. It cannot be allowed to happen. It can't. I was at those protests in 2005. I just turned 18 and I was full of P and V and the rest of it. And even at the time, it was like I was confused. I didn't really understand the full implications of what was going on. And as time has gone on, it's not been nowhere near ideal in terms of an ownership. And I think a lot of what was being protested about back then has kind of been borne out. But we had Ferguson to sort of offset a lot of that pain, so to speak. But I think now, and I'm not a part of the internal workings or machinations of the club or what have you, but I cannot for 1 second believe that what has gone on this season and what is being spoken about, and there aren't a few people in the club in higher positions that are going, yes, actually, we do need to modernise. We do need to completely reevaluate the way that we do things. And I think that just in the same ways that we wouldn't be able to expect Ole Gunnar Solskjaer to turn it all around in the space of 4 or 5 months, I don't think that now, if this is the plan that's going to be in place with a more modern structure, that we can expect Woodward to be turning it around in 4 or 5 months either. I would be more Woodward out than Glazers out, just simply because there is no alternative. Everything is a non-starter. Just the geezer that you're on about there as well. I think the reason his name has come up is because he had previously made overtures to the Glazers about what the price would be to try and buy it. And I think he was quoted in an interview as saying that the cost was way out there in terms of what they would expect. And that was a couple of years ago. And we've only got more.
So the value of the club's even higher now.
Exactly. So whereas he might have amassed more personal wealth as well, who knows? But I don't know what his bank account looked like back then. I imagine it looked slightly better than mine.
20 billion apparently is worth.
Yeah, only slightly better than mine then. So, yeah, and everything is a non-starter for me in terms of who comes into the club.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree with you a lot where you say, more kind of Woodward out. For me as well, that there is, of course, massive issues at the club, and I can understand why a lot of people are not happy.
Yeah, and I don't want it to seem like that this is like, because there is a school of thought which is quite sneering at the Glazers out movement, and I don't think that we want to come across like that, because that's not, I don't think, where any of us are at with it. We all acknowledge and we all know that the Glazer model of ownership has been to the detriment of the club in the long term, particularly over the last 5 or 6 years. However, people who are really involved in the Glazers up movement need to kind of take a step back and really, really think about what it is that they're saying in terms of the only people that could ever afford us and what they want, what they're willing to say in terms of what they're willing to put up with, and the sort of cognitive dissonance that they're willing to have to say, I don't care about what these people do. I just want my football team to do well. It doesn't matter about people dying. It doesn't matter about journalists dying at their behest. All I care about is whether or not my football team is good. You really need to kind of have a word of yourself if that's all it's going to mean to you. If you're going to just completely ditch your moral compass for the sake of your football team being able to afford a nice fancy player every summer, then you need to have a serious word of yourself.
Yeah, I mean, that is the biggest problem as well that I've had with a lot of this current Glazer out kind of posting is that a lot of it seems to be linked to people being unhappy about that we've not done much transfer business yet, and that we've not spent a lot on players. And, that's something I don't agree with at all, because, we've spent tons of money in the last few years, wasted most of it, admittedly. And that's something that there has to be some criticism for. There's definitely been big issues on the recruitment side. One with managers, two with players, and there hasn't been the right kind of joined up thinking and plan and philosophy in the back of the club. I think we all said when Mourinho left that the most important thing was to change this structure in the club, where we need some kind of whether it's director of football, technical director, whatever it is. And I am slightly disappointed that we've not seen anything confirmed on that side, although there was some kind of email PR thing put out, wasn't there, saying that we're still working on that.
Yeah, a supposed leaked email, which was definitely just a press briefing. That's all it was. Don't get it twisted. Our fucking admin team isn't embarrassing for leaking an email or anything that you want to fucking say. That's just a press briefing under the auspices of a leaked email. It was a lie. That's all it was. # Woodward out.
Yeah, and look, this side of thing definitely needs to change. So it's fair enough for people to show they're not happy. But the point actually where I did start getting involved in some of the debate and do not agree at all is when people start talking about, match-going fans should boycott, nobody should turn up for the first game of the season, and this kind of stuff, which I just
That's not even realistic. It's not even realistic.
Look, it's never going to happen. It's been, and as well, some people... I know we have new fans and fans all around the world, and maybe some of the fans don't know that these things have all been tried and talked about in the past before. I mean, one in 2005, quite a few fans unfortunately did leave, which I didn't agree with at the time, and they went and set up, another football club, FC United, and, not something I agree with. But it's a long time ago now. Again, around that 2009 green and gold time, there was talks of boycotts and all that I didn't agree with at all. And I did not have a problem with the green and gold movement, because that was very much about, look, turn up to the game and show in the ground that you're not happy with what's going on. Yeah. And that, for me, is the right way to protest.
Absolutely.
And show the owners that, look, we're not happy with where things are at and things need to change and something needs to be done about it. And I remember back then that got massive press. All the match-going kind of goers got behind that movement. And, it was big things. And, it actually created a really great atmosphere at Old Trafford at the time. Remember, David Beckham picking up a scarf, even though maybe he says he didn't know too much about what he was doing. But, there was a game against Milan, I think, where it... I think it was a game against Milan where it really went off with a massive, amazing atmosphere. I can remember some big banners coming down there. And for me, that is the best way to do it. Still support the team, but show you're not happy in the ground. And things about boycotts or whatever, I'll never agree with. And it's something that realistically is never going to happen, because you have to remember that minimum 50,000 season ticket holders have already paid for their tickets. And if you're going to expect any significant number of these to just say, listen, I'm just going to piss that 50, 60, 70, 80 quid down the drain, it's just not going to happen, basically. So, fair enough to show your displeasure. But, if you're not a natural somebody who's getting hit in the pocket by going to matches yourself, then maybe think twice before you start talking about who should boycott and anything like that. That's kind of where I'm at on these things. I mean, Ashwin, it's your evil Americans who've come and done this to our club, right? So you're to blame.
Apologise for your kind, Yank scum.
I think you said in the pre-chat that you're used to awful sports owners anyway, and whatever other clubs you own follow, right?
Yeah, I mean the Glazers are pretty unique though, because they actually saddled the club with God knows how much debt, and then they've siphoned off a lot of cash from the. I mean, they've monetized United to line their own pockets, really, and I mean, of course, they have spent quite a bit. You have to say, since the post-Ferguson era, but that's what they're supposed to do. They're the owners of the club, and it's different. You're not asking them to provide a cash injection. You're asking them to use the money generated by the club to improve the club. I do think that Glazers out is unfortunately not a realistic standard to have. But Woodward out, or at least Woodward get your shit together. Maybe that's the that's the goal that we need to have. And I don't know. It's crazy to me that we still don't have a technical director or director of football, but we're totally going to hire one after this summer. I don't know.
It's something definitely I think we all agreed that we do need to see some change in the kind of structure of the club, how things are run. I think we're all in agreement on that. Woodward's role, and there has to be somebody else coming in. I think the big issue seems to have been that it's not clear what this other role is going to be anyway. I mean, I think we know that Rio Ferdinand has been talked to, but then he even made some comments after that process of basically saying, listen, I'm not really sure what they want this role to be either. And he's even been discussed about it. So, yeah, I think the club is still trying to work out who this person is going to be, what exactly they're going to do. Is it going to be more just about the kind of footballing philosophy within the club and through the different levels, or is it somebody who's going to really get involved in the transfer side? I mean, yeah, that's the thing, that we've never had these kind of people before. We always had very powerful managers, whether it was Busby, Ferguson, even, whatever, Ron Atkinson, who were in charge of transfers, doing the business and dealing with training and dealing with picking the team. Whereas, nowadays, I think even Mourinho came out and said recently that, maybe that's too much for one guy to do nowadays, and you do need somebody else to act as some kind of go-between between different parts of the club.
I mean, when you think about it, we kind of did have a director of football for 26 years. It was Sir Alex Ferguson. Like, his job title was manager, but with the amount of delegating that he did, he just coached the team as well, or sat in the dugout at least. Like, he was a de facto manager stroke director of football all rolled into one. So we know what the role kind of entails. It's just we kind of need to just invent a time machine, right?
No, and I think it is worth saying as well that Fergie always said himself that he worked very closely with David Gill, and they were kind of a partnership on when transfer business was being done. Whereas you get the impression that nowadays it's more like Woodward and whoever it is. I don't know. There's people like Matt Judge mentioned and other people. Maybe.
But if Woodward's got a half decent working relationship with Solskjaer, and I'm just spitballing because again I'm not the biggest fan of Woodward, but if Woodward has a working relationship with Solskjaer whereby Solskjaer has gone to him and said, I need these 5 players, I reckon if we get these 5 in, we're off to a good start, and he goes out and gets them, then whether or not if it works or not is fine. But at least right now what we're seeing is, despite all the bluster, I think what we're seeing is a coherent strategy for the first time in a while. And I think it's just being overshadowed by the fact that everybody seems to think that there isn't one, when it seems that it's quite the opposite is true. Like we seem to not really being a sort of like scattergun. No one really knows what we're doing. We're doing things in our own time, in our own way. And we've already got 2 out of, one signing basically came up straight away with James, and that was done straight away. And as soon as we were linked to Wan-Bissaka, it became evident that we were the only team that were ever in the running to do that as well. So who knows? Maybe we're seeing it, or maybe we're not. Maybe it's happening and we're just not seeing it.
I think the strategy I think there's a clear strategy now. Whether it's going to work or not, I don't know. But I think that they're identifying players that they feel they have a pretty much clear run at. All the players we've been linked to, the major players we've been linked to, seem like guys that we haven't had major competition for. Longstaff fits that bill. Fernandez fits that bill. So, we'll see. Even like the higher targets who it seems that we're not going to have a chance at this summer, like Sancho. That was another player where it seemed like, if we had gone Champions League, we more or less would have had a free run at him. So I think maybe that has changed. I think Mark touched on this earlier. I don't know if it's young and British, but I do think that young is part of it. I think that they are looking for players that are more athletic and mobile than necessarily. Whereas I think with Mourinho, he really liked big physical players. But I think I do think that the game has changed a little bit, where that physicality is a little less important than mobility, and that seems to be something that is evident in the players we've targeted. Like even Longstaff, I think I don't know if he's going to be Carrick level good, but he is more mobile than Carrick, so that's something to note as well. And then I think all the players, again, like these James, Wan-Bissaka, and then Fernandez and Longstaff, the two players that haven't come in yet, but we seem at least somewhat favorites to bring them in. They're both very good at pressing and defensive work rate. So there definitely does seem to be a common theme among some of these players that we're targeting, more direct on the counter and stuff like that too. So whether that's good enough, I don't know. And obviously, if Ole were to get sacked, would we replace him with a manager who would have a completely different approach to transfers and players that he wants, and how would we manage that? That's the stuff that we don't know, and that's why you need a director of football, or just whatever it is, like technical director of football. I don't really care about the title.
Yeah, I mean, that is the biggest issue we've had, isn't it? That we've had, like, the current squad is basically the product of like 5 different managers, and there's still some Fergie players. There's the odd Moyes, well, maybe only one Moyes player, to be honest, because Fellaini's left now. A few Van Hals, a few Mourinhos, now, a few Oles, and it's kind of inevitable that you're going to have a bit of a hodgepodge. And that's why you want to have, like you say, somebody who comes in who can oversee even if different managers come and go, that the right kind of player is there that can play even for the next guy. But look, it all remains to be seen at the moment, and that is the big thing. I think we all agreed that we want to have some kind of change in the footballing side, the hierarchy of how things are done at the club. And fair enough that people can keep going on their Glazer out Twitter stuff. But I think expecting people to be showing up at Old Trafford in mass protests and all at the moment is not really going to happen. But feel free to keep that online campaign going and make sure the club know that we do want some changes going on there. I think that kind of covers most of the main stuff on the transfers and Glazers that we wanted to cover. I don't know if you guys have been watching any of the other football that's going on. We have had the African Nations is going on, although we haven't got any interest there because Eric Bailly's injured, so didn't make it out.
Wow, what a surprise.
I think he would have been our only interest there. Then, as I say, Sanchez has been doing very well out in South America. So, you only hope he can bring that back in. I've been watching a bit of the Women's World Cup randomly, and my wife said I had to mention it. So it's on the list because it was a must for the equality side and all. But I've actually been enjoying it. England are doing pretty well. It's always good to watch an England team. The Lionesses are in the semi-finals against USA tomorrow, Ashwin.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's gonna be time to get spanked.
To be honest, I think, USA are favourites there. But, our women's team do well. And there's quite a good United link there because obviously Phil Neville's the manager. And I think currently he's probably got title of best Fergie product to go into management at the moment, having taken the team to the World Cup semi-finals. And he hasn't got much to compete against, seeing as there's been a long list of failures of ex-Fergie pupils so far.
I don't know if failures is... Alex McLeish at least won a league title with Rangers, didn't he?
Yeah, all right. Even others, Robson, Keane had some successes, but nobody had ever. These are players where at the time you thought they would be the guys to come and maybe replace Fergie, but they all then ended up going downhill somewhere or another. And all right, even somebody like Steve Bruce has had successes. There has been other players, so maybe I'm being unfair, but nobody's really hit real highs so far.
Phil has done well. Like I said in the Phil Neville thread as well that I felt that he was in for some sort of undue stick. I think he's kind of still got that association with the Moyes era, and obviously the whole "fuck off Phil" kind of thing, which is hilarious, but still kind of unfair. I think he's probably going to be in line for. Well, I think actually he signed on to coach Britain. I think in the 2020 Olympics now.
Yeah. Okay.
So someone is paying attention at least. I think he's probably in line for a better job. Not better. That's really unfair way of putting it. But I think someone in the men's game for a more lucrative job, shall we say, is probably on its way to him. Whether it's sort of like a championship or low Premiership type club, I don't know. But I think he's certainly done himself no harm with these last 2 campaigns actually that he's been on. He had the campaign last summer, which I think England did quite well in as well, in the She Believes Cup. So he's. Listen, I'm happy for Phil, and yeah, hopefully we manage to stick one on the Yanks.
There is a couple of the United ladies in the England squad there as well. Alex Greenwood, I think, scored a goal the other day, and there's Abby McManus. I saw there was a couple as well in the Scottish team. They got knocked out. That was one of the crazy games where Scotland women were 3-0 up with like 10 minutes left of their match that would have seen them through to the knockouts, and managed to draw that match 3-3. And they managed to draw it against Argentina, and then it was the weirdest game because it was the game where at the end both teams were gutted because they both went out from that drawed result, and they were both like shouting at the ref to keep the game going. It was the first time you've ever seen both sets of players rounding on the referee going, play some more minutes, because the draw saw them both going out basically.
I think the end of some of these women's matches are absolutely crazy. Like, I don't know what it is, but I was watching the USA-France match last weekend, and that was insane, too, at the end. Like, the last 10 minutes are just ridiculous.
Because they played for 90 minutes,
There's a crazy, like, VIR thing that's been going on at this Women's World Cup. It's what screwed Scotland over, and I hope that they throw this rule out. And it's a new rule about penalties, where they've been using VAR to see if the goalie stays on the line or not, and been giving some incredibly harsh calls against goalies who've literally been like millimeters off the line when the ball is kicked and making them and that. I hope that isn't something that makes it. It's definitely a rule change that needs to be reversed again, because it's been absolute bullshit, that one. There's one other as well. I saw that. In fact, I didn't know until I was just reading the stats. But yeah, Netherlands are also in the semi-finals. So it's England versus USA and Holland versus Sweden. And United's women's first ever foreign signing is a lady called Jackie Groenen, who's been playing for Holland, signed from Frankfurt, and will be in the other semi-final.
Yeah, I saw something about that.
Yeah, so our whole team last year was British, who won the second division, and now will be in the Women's Premier League next year. And in fact, I think the opening game of the season is Man City versus Man United in the Women's Premier League.
That'll be good.
So yeah, something to keep a look at. But yeah, I think we're like just with a promoted team basically, so not too much expectation on us, hopefully. But yeah, as I said, I promised the wife I'd give a mention to the Women's World Cup, and yeah, I've actually been quite enjoying it. The level's been better than I expected. So yeah,
in all seriousness,
out for that one.
Sorry, just to jump ahead. In all seriousness as well, we as a podcast we kind of unilaterally agreed. I think when the last time we were on a conversation, I think Ed was involved, that we probably should try and start to do more as it pertains to the women's team as well.
I think Craig had been following them, but then he's had like his laptop shut down on him or something like months ago, and we haven't seen him on the podcast for ages. He was, I think, following the team quite closely. I've had the odd look at what they're doing, and did go to one of their matches live last year, and maybe I'll try and turn up again this season.
Kind of need to step up on that, I think, because if we're going to be all things Manchester United, then more United ladies content next year.
No, I'm sure we'll follow it more, especially since the women have reached the Premier League now and they'll be getting a lot more press. I think that was one of the problems last season because, the Women's Championship doesn't get that much press. A lot of the matches weren't on live and people were having to just kind of follow on Twitter what was going on. But now that they got promoted and they're in the Premier League, then, it should be quite different this year. All power to the women's game, basically.
Just the name association alone will do wonders, I think.
Yeah, and in fact, I saw that Real Madrid as well had not had a women's team, and this summer have bought some other Madrid-based women's team and they're going to change their name to Real Madrid.
Of course they are.
So they're jumping on the bandwagon as well, basically. I think that's most of the stuff we were going to cover on this show. We will definitely have another show before the start of the season. I think we start our pre-season out in Australia just in 2 weeks' time, basically.
Yeah, Perth and then Leeds. Is it Perth?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Perth, Leeds, and then I think we're off to Singapore against, I think, is it Milan and
Spurs?
Yeah, so we'll see what happens in a pre-season. We'll definitely have one more pod out before the season starts. Maybe two if you're lucky. We'll see what we manage to put together.
Steady on.
I think that's covered most of the things we wanted to this time, at least. Like I say, good luck to England's ladies. I think probably by the time you listen to this, you'll hear whether Ashwin's ladies or whether our ladies have got through.
Ashwin's ladies just makes him sound like just
the New York pimp. He's a New York pimp.
Yeah.
That's, I can't deny it.
But yeah, look, like I say, interesting times at the moment. Let's see where we go in the transfer window, and yeah, looking forward to all the preseason games kicking off again. And yeah, do please, thanks for all the questions we've had. Like I say, we do like that kind of feedback. And yeah, there were some questions we didn't answer on this show that we will kind of cover maybe on the next one. And yeah, please do follow us, retweet on Twitter, Facebook, review us on iTunes, all that kind of thing that helps out with getting us going for the new season.
Help my tweets. I'm working like the Dickens here. I've lost 7 followers this week. We were at 489 and now we're at 482. Fuck the lot.
Oh, no, that's all your fault, right? Yeah. Help Mark. We'll start a new Twitter campaign. All right. Good night, all.
And yeah, good night for me.
And good evening for me.